okay? If another wife wasn't in that space, they still had the opportunity.
GlowGossips USA presents the untold courtroom chaos no one saw coming, where truth shattered legacies, and what unfolded was more than just a legal battle. It was a public reckoning. The courtroom sat in thick, suffocating silence, filled with raw tension and emotions teetering on the edge of eruption. It wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was the burial of a dream, a family, and a man's once proud legacy. The lights overhead buzzed faintly, casting cold glares on the tense faces of those seated inside. The echo of heartbreak was in the air, and the weight of unspoken truths hung heavier than the judge's gavel. Then the double doors creaked open. Kody Brown entered, no longer the charismatic patriarch of a polygamous empire, but a ghost of the man he once was. His steps were heavy, his eyes sunken, the proud tilt of his head now a downward slump that carried the shame of years gone wrong. The aura that once made cameras fall in love with him had vanished. The room didn't stir when he arrived. No gasps, no murmurs, just a heavy pause as if time itself were watching the man who had lost everything walk into the heart of his reckoning. Robyn sat to his right, her once carefully curated image, now reduced to red-rimmed eyes and a balled-up tissue crushed in her trembling hand. Gone was the confident wife with her dramatic monologues and mascara-laced tears for the cameras. There were no TLC lights here, no producer whispering what to say, only raw, unedited pain. She wore no makeup, her hair hung limply, and though she sat close to Kody, it felt like miles separated them. To Kody's left sat Janelle, silent, unmoved, her posture like iron forged through years of disappointment. There were no tears on her face, just the quiet rage of a woman who had been ignored, left behind, and finally awakened. Her eyes didn't wander to Kody. They stared straight ahead, focused, unwavering. Behind her, a few of her adult children sat together, unmoved and distant, the pain etched into their expressions as the gravity of the moment settled in. They weren't there to support their father. They were there to testify. The Brown children were no longer just kids from a reality show. They were witnesses to a collapse that had stolen their innocence. The judge entered with an air of finality that snapped the tension like a whip. A seasoned woman with decades of experience in family law, her stern gaze swept across the courtroom like a storm front rolling in. Her voice, calm and clinical, echoed through the chamber as she opened the hearing. This case involves the division of family assets, emotional distress claims, abandonment charges, and temporary custody considerations for remaining minors. The audience inhaled sharply. This wasn't about property. This was about devastation. Janelle's attorney, sharp in a navy suit and armed with a bulging folder of evidence, was the first to rise. He didn't pace. He didn't perform. He simply approached the bench and began unraveling Kody Brown's life, piece by brutal piece. This case, he said firmly, is about a man who walked away, not from a house or a job, but from his role as a father, as a husband, as a moral center for his family. The documents, testimonies, and records we present will paint a clear pattern of emotional neglect, financial favoritism, and abandonment, masquerading as spiritual leadership. The words rang out like cannon fire. Kody flinched. He didn't look up. He couldn't. Not when the attorney began reading texts from children left unread, voicemails unanswered, birthdays forgotten. The screen behind them showed a series of messages from Gabe, one of Janelle's sons, pleading for time with his father during the holidays. No response. Another series showed Savannah asking why Robyn's kids got new laptops while she waited 6 months for school supplies. The gallery, stirred, whispers of shock and anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Robyn's lawyer, dressed in charcoal gray, stood next, not as fiery, but no less damaging. She didn't try to protect Kody. She was there for Robyn and Robyn alone. My client, Robyn Brown, acknowledges the pain this family...
For Robyn, that was significant, and in my mind, I wanted to elevate all my relationships to that point.
...has endured, but she too has been left in an emotional vacuum, managing children, finances, and backlash alone. Her tone was cautious but strategic. Robyn sniffled beside her, dabbing at her eyes, looking every bit the victim. Then came the part no one was ready for. The judge looked directly at Kody. "Mr. Brown, do you intend to speak for yourself? Today?" she asked. Kody straightened, though his body sagged with fatigue. "Yes, Your Honor," he answered, voice cracking like dry wood. It was a whisper, a breathless confession of a man who once roared in family living rooms but now barely echoed in a courtroom. Kody stood, and the courtroom held its breath. He cleared his throat, glanced quickly at Robyn, then at Janelle. But neither woman met his eyes. His voice wavered. "I never imagined it would come to this," he began. "I gave everything. I had to this family. I tried to lead, to build something no one else dared to try." He paused, swallowing hard. "I failed. Not just them, but myself." Somewhere in the gallery, someone stifled a sob. "I wanted unity. I wanted strength in numbers. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the people I loved. I leaned on Robyn too hard. I neglected Janelle and the kids. And now I'm here, not as a husband, not even as a father, but as a defendant in a courtroom where everything I built is being dissected like a corpse." Silence. Utter, crushing silence. Janelle looked away, her jaw clenched. Robyn shook her head and stared down at her lap. Kody's voice broke again. "You can take the land, you can split the money, but you can't undo the pain I caused. I live with that every day." The judge didn't blink. Her pen tapped once against the papers before her. "Thank you, Mr. Brown. Let's proceed." Then came the exhibits. Janelle's lawyer presented photos of Coyote Pass, sections cleared, and built up only for Robyn's planned home, while Janelle camped in an RV with no electricity. Videos played showing Kody arriving with gifts for Robyn's children while ignoring the others. A security cam clip revealed a painful moment, Savannah sitting alone on her birthday porch while Kody's truck sped down the street, never stopping. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. These weren't accusations, these were facts. Kody's face fell. Robyn's attorney attempted damage control, introducing screenshots of her own, text messages where she urged Kody to reach out to the kids, records showing she tried to bridge the gaps. She didn't ask for favoritism, her lawyer insisted. She inherited it. It was a clever move, but not enough. Then came Janelle herself. She stood slowly, and for a moment, no one dared breathe. "I stayed for the kids," she said, quietly. "Not for Kody. I waited year after year hoping he'd come back, not just physically, but emotionally. But he didn't. He chose Robyn every time. He abandoned his promises. He left me to carry our children through pain he refused to see." She turned to look at him finally. Her voice never shook. "You were a father when the cameras were rolling, but when they left, so did you." Kody looked down. Behind Janelle, her son sat frozen. Gabriel's hands gripped his knees. Garrison stared at the wall. Savannah had her head bowed, but her lips trembled. The damage was undeniable, and now it had a voice. The judge called for a recess. As people filed out into the hall, whispers exploded like wildfire. Kody Brown, the man who once represented unity, was now on trial not just in court, but in the hearts of those who once watched him build something beautiful. His empire of wives, children, and dreams had come crashing down in a courtroom flooded with pain and betrayal. He didn't just lose a legal battle, he lost his family.
Here that Kody is telling Janelle that the boys need to apologize to me.
The courtroom had not recovered from the impact of Janelle's opening testimony when Robyn's attorney stood once more. Her voice was calm, even measured, as though carefully navigating a minefield. "My client is not interested in hostility," she began, speaking with the poise of someone trying to sweep up shattered glass without cutting herself. "She does, however, ask that the record reflect the emotional cost created by relentless public scrutiny, family discord, and years of misrepresentation." Robyn sat tensely beside her, lips trembling, her eyes fixed on the crumpled tissue she refused to let go of. "She does not seek conflict, but closure," her lawyer added quietly. Robyn gave a small nod, barely perceptible, as if any movement might make her emotions spill. The judge made a few notes, flipping through the thick pre-trial exhibits. Her brows furrowed. Then her eyes shifted toward Kody. "Mr. Brown," she said, her tone neutral but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "You may address the court or either side before we proceed." Kody stood slowly, his chair creaking like old wood under strain. He glanced at Robyn. She didn't meet his eyes. Then he looked at Janelle, whose face was turned forward, unmoving. Lastly, his eyes settled on the judge. "I never thought we'd be here," he began, his voice low but shaking with emotion. "What started as faith, as unity, turned into a storm I couldn't control. I hurt people. I see that now." The room didn't move. Not a single cough, no shuffling papers, just the bare, broken voice of a man unraveling before witnesses. He turned slightly to look toward the gallery, and there they were, his children. They watched him, not with contempt, not with sympathy, but with a strange, painful kind of neutrality. As if they had waited too long for this moment, only to feel nothing now that it had arrived. "I know I let some of my kids down," Kody continued, his breath catching. "I wasn't there when it counted." His voice cracked, and for a moment he couldn't speak. He swallowed hard, pushing forward. "Somewhere along the way, I believed in our calling. I believed that love could be shared. But I forgot what love is. Not the idea. Real love. Showing up. Listening. Staying." The courtroom remained hushed. Yet something had shifted. This wasn't a confession. It was a funeral for what once was. The judge nodded faintly. "Very well. We'll move forward with document review and begin cross-examinations this afternoon. Court is in recess for 30 minutes. Her gavel dropped with a finality that felt less procedural and more like the toll of a bell marking the death of denial. Kody sat down, his hands trembling in his lap. This wasn't about land anymore. This was about legacy, and his was cracking in public view. Then came the sound of movement. Not from an attorney, not from the bench, but from Robyn Brown. She stood slowly, as if every muscle resisted her. The room seemed to hold its breath. There were no cameras, no TLC producers, but the moment had a gravity that made it feel like it was being broadcast to the world. She walked to the witness stand without looking at anyone, her black outfit simple, somber. Not costume, not drama. Just loss. A bailiff handed her a bottle of water, which she held tightly but didn't drink. Her hands shook. Her eyes, puffy, sleepless, looked not at Kody, not at Janelle, but somewhere inward, into a part of herself long ignored. On her lap, she held a small stack of papers, edges curled, creases worn from years of being folded and refolded. These weren't court documents. These were letters. Kody's letters, written during the unraveling of their plural marriage. With a voice that cracked on the first syllable, Robyn whispered, These were written when he still loved me." The judge raised an eyebrow. Robyn's lawyer stood. "Leave to introduce personal correspondence as evidence?" The judge didn't hesitate. "Granted." Robyn held up the first page, her fingers trembling. He wrote, "I can't be everything for everyone. I chose you, Robyn, and they'll never forgive us for it." The words tore out of her, like pieces of her soul forced into daylight. She paused, voice breaking. "Even when he said he loved me, he resented me." Her tone dropped, almost inaudible. "And they, Janelle, Christine, Mary, they hated me for it." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled, others gasped quietly. Janelle's attorney half rose to object but thought better of it. Even he could see, this wasn't strategy. This was grief. "I didn't ask to be chosen," Robyn said, eyes finally lifting to meet the judge's. "I didn't want to replace anyone, I just wanted to belong." Her voice grew stronger. "But instead, I became the reason it all fell apart." The courtroom was still, as though waiting for something to break. "I remember the night Kody told me he couldn't pretend anymore," Robyn continued. "He sat at our kitchen table holding his head in his hands. He said, 'They hate me. They hate us, I'm done trying.'" From the gallery, a sharp breath was heard. One of Janelle's daughters, possibly. A reminder that the words spoken now had lived before, behind closed doors with real consequences. He became a non-husband, Robyn said bitterly. The day he chose me, everything else disappeared, and that choice became a curse. She looked directly at Kody now. Do you know what it's like to be blamed for everything? To be called manipulative, controlling, a home wrecker? She took a shaky breath. I just wanted a home, a dad for my kids, peace. Her voice turned colder. The cameras never caught the nights I lay awake alone. The nights I texted him, begged him to check on Janelle, on Christine, on the kids, holidays where I begged him to go, to be a father again. She lifted another letter. He wrote, I see the pain I'm causing, but I can't quit. I want peace, but all I feel is guilt. Her voice dropped. That's Kody. The real him, not the one on TV, the one who collapsed under the weight of his own empire. Her tears returned, but she didn't wipe them. You think I ruined the family? I didn't. I was just the one left standing when it finally collapsed. The room was breathless. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, what are you asking this court for? Robyn took a long breath, her voice ragged but clear. I don't want his money. I don't want revenge. I want it on record that I tried, that I loved, that I sacrificed, even when I was hated, that I will continue raising our children, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. She left the stand, each step heavier than the last. When she sat back down, a single tear rolled down her cheek, and this time, she let it fall. All eyes turned to Kody. His face was unreadable, broken, silent. And then Janelle rose. No tissue, no quivering lip. She moved with the poise of someone who had waited too long for justice to be afraid of the moment. If Robyn was the storm, Janelle was the stillness before lightning strikes. She took her seat and folded her hands. The judge nodded. Please state your name for the record. Janelle Brown, she answered simply. Spiritual wife of Kody Brown for more than 25 years, mother of 6 of his children, and now an advocate for all of them. She leaned forward slightly. Let me be clear. This isn't about money. This is about my kids. The words hit like a hammer. Even the court reporter paused for a beat. Janelle continued. The boys needed a father. What they got was silence. Kody didn't move. His knuckles had turned white where they gripped the edge of the table, but still he didn't speak. I'm not talking about missed dinners, Janelle said calmly. I'm talking about birthdays forgotten, graduations skipped, illnesses faced alone, sons who had to become men without a single word of guidance or pride from their father. Her voice thickened, and for a moment, even the judge shifted uncomfortably. One of those sons is no longer with us. A quiet gasp swept the courtroom. Garrison didn't just die of sadness, Janelle said, her voice low but blistering. He died of abandonment. The silence was deafening. The grief was choking. He reached out, again and again, left messages, waited on holidays, prayed for that call. Her voice broke only slightly. It never came, but when he passed, Kody cried for the cameras, but my son never heard those tears. Savannah, sitting behind her mother, reached for a tissue. Gabriel stared blankly ahead. Kody kept his head down. And now, Janelle continued, voice rising ever so slightly. He wants joint custody of children he hasn't spent a holiday with in 3 years, the same man who spent nights at Robyn's while the rest of us barely scraped through. She shook her head bitterly. I'm not fighting to destroy Kody, I'm fighting to protect my children. They deserve stability, they deserve peace, and they deserve to know the truth. She looked toward the judge. We were taught that plural marriage was about unity, about building strong homes together. But that unity died the day Robyn became the center of Kody's world. She turned toward Robyn. And I don't say that to blame her. I say that because it was the moment my kids became invisible. The courtroom sat in stunned, aching silence. Kody didn't look up. And Janelle, calm and composed, folded her hands and finished with quiet finality. I'm not asking for justice. I'm asking for recognition that these children were real, that their pain was real, and that the damage can no longer be denied. Kody Brown stood frozen in the center of the courtroom, the final judgment echoing in his ears like a thunderclap. The gavel had long since struck, but the sound reverberated deep within him, shaking the last remnants of control he had once wielded so effortlessly. His eyes, bloodshot and wide, darted between the faces he used to call family. Robyn stood to his left, stunned and pale, her lips pressed into a line so tight it could barely conceal the trembling beneath. Across the room, Janelle and Mary sat, side by side, a picture of quiet victory, strength born of scars, and unwavering resolve. Christine was absent, but her shadow loomed large. Her exit had started this spiral, and Kody knew it. The judge's words still rang in his head. All financial assets associated with Coyote Pass are to be equitably distributed between Mary Brown and Janelle Brown, effective immediately. The plaintiff, Robyn Sullivan Brown, has been found in violation of multiple clauses related to fraud, concealment of assets, and coercive misrepresentation. Robyn's knees buckled. She gripped the table beside her, knuckles white, breath shallow. Kody turned to catch her, instinct overriding thought, but she recoiled. There was something different in her eyes now. Not fear, not even pain. It was betrayal. And it wasn't directed at the others. It was aimed squarely at him. As the courtroom emptied, murmurs followed them like ghosts. Reporters, fans, former church members, all whispering the same question. What happened to the family we once admired? But those closest to the wreckage knew. The collapse hadn't been sudden. It had been a slow, methodical decay, hidden behind carefully curated TLC segments and Robyn's practiced tears. Back at the family estate, or what remained of it, Mary and Janelle walked side by side, quiet but filled with a deep, cathartic sense of closure. You did it, Janelle whispered, her voice cracking. We did it, Mary corrected, gently. And not just for us, for our kids, for the truth. The truth. That was the real inheritance now, not the land, not the homes, but the truth that had been buried under years of control, manipulation, and silence. Robyn sat alone in the master bedroom, the one she and Kody had guarded like a fortress. Now, it felt like a prison. The court had ruled that her claim to the property was invalid due to falsified tax records and secret transfers of family funds. Her legal team had gone silent the moment the documents surfaced, her own signature authorizing the funneling of Coyote Pass income into a private LLC under her maiden name. Christine had known something was off. So had Janelle. But it was Mary who had the courage to dig, to question, to expose. Kody slammed the front door behind him, pacing like a caged animal. They ambushed us, he muttered, his voice cracking under the weight of denial. They turned the kids against us. They turned you against me. Robyn looked up slowly. No, Kody. You did that. You chose secrets. You chose isolation. You thought keeping me above the rest would keep you safe. It made us enemies. Her words sliced clean through the last illusion he clung to. For the first time, Kody saw himself not as the victim, but as the architect of his own downfall. The next day, the media frenzy exploded. Headlines screamed betrayal, tax fraud, spiritual manipulation. TLC suspended filming indefinitely. They released a statement noting their commitment to truth and transparency, but everyone knew what it really meant. They were pulling the plug before more skeletons spilled out. Meanwhile, Janelle's phone buzzed nonstop. Publishers, podcasts, and even Netflix producers wanting her side of the story. She declined them all. For now. This wasn't about fame, it was about healing. At her modest Flagstaff home, she brewed tea as Savannah curled up beside her. Does this mean it's over, Mom? The teen asked softly. Janelle hesitated. Not over, she said. But it's the start of something better. In Utah, Christine watched it all unfold on her laptop, David Woolley by her side. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You okay?" She nodded. "I am. I wish it didn't have to burn to the ground." David leaned in. "Sometimes, that's the only way to rebuild." Back in Arizona, Mary returned to Lizzie's Heritage Inn, her sanctuary. Tourists recognized her more now, not just as a reality star, but as the woman who stood up and fought back. One morning, she found a letter slipped under her door. No name, just shaky handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me I'm allowed to leave when love turns into a lie." She clutched it to her chest, tears finally falling, not from pain, but from release. Kody, meanwhile, descended into silence. The phone stopped ringing. The wives were gone. The children barely answered texts. Even Robyn retreated, spending her days in legal consultations, trying to salvage what she could from the wreckage. Her online boutique closed. IRS agents began inquiries. Coyote Pass was no longer theirs. And then came the final blow. A letter from the court, delivered by a pale-faced clerk. Pending federal investigation into fraudulent property transfers, misuse of family income, and back taxes dating 10 years. Kody stood on the porch, the wind cold against his skin, reading the letter over and over. He let it fall from his hands. It drifted into the dirt, settling among the broken branches and dry leaves, like a forgotten memory of what they had once dreamed. Days later, Aurora posted a cryptic video on social media, hinting at years of secrets, emotional control, and being used as leverage between adults. The comments exploded. Kody and Robyn were officially canceled. The internet didn't. Forgive when the victims were their own children. Janelle's son spoke out next, not with anger, but truth. Logan, always quiet, broke his silence in a heartfelt blog post detailing the emotional abuse they all suffered under the pressure to conform, to submit, to pretend. And that's when it shifted. Public sympathy, once divided, now roared behind the wives. Not just Christine or Janelle, even Mary, once seen as cold or distant, became a symbol of resilience. They weren't just sister wives, they were survivors. In a quiet moment, Mary, Janelle, and Christine met at a small cafe in Salt Lake City. No cameras, no scripts, just three women who had escaped a storm. They talked, they laughed, they cried, and finally they toasted to freedom, to truth, to the messy, painful, beautiful rebirth of self. "We made it out," Christine said. Mary smiled. "Barely." Janelle raised her glass. "But we're never going back." Far away, alone in a small, rented cabin, Kody stared at an empty fireplace. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was haunting. He had once stood at the head of a vast, complex family, 4 wives, 18 children, a national TV audience, and an empire of belief built on unity. Now he had none of it. No wives, no empire, no faith in his own story. Only truth remained, raw, unfiltered, and too late.